Thanks for inviting me here, and it's good to see that so many people think about Europe's future and possible remedies of the problems of the European integration and all the political cooperation at European level. And it's even nicer to see that my brand new research group on the strategic issues of the European integration is very well represented here, because I'm two colleagues in the audience. So I have to show my best capacities and skills to perform here. When I talk about trust and the correlation between trust and politics, and let me use my special point as a starting point, because I'm a political scientist, a lawyer and political scientist, a politician and a former commissioner. So my observations will come mostly from the field of politics. And of course, when we talk about the correlation between trust and politics, I think that's one of the most sensitive and most important issues if we take democratic societies, because otherwise, in other political regimes or political systems, trust is not so sensitive issue, because in a dictatorship, for instance, trust is not very well exposed problem. It can be a sensitive issue during revolts, during public resistance or civic disobedience. And it can enlighten the problems of trust and that time in dictatorships. But in the functioning of the political system, trust is not a very important issue. I mean, how to organize the oppression, how to organize the implementation of the decisions are much more important issues in dictatorships. While in democracy, trust is the heart of the political system. If there's no trust in democracy, if there's no confidence in the procedures, in the institutions, in the interpersonal relations, democracy will die. And we can see some sad examples of failure of democratizations or democratic systems. We started with vanishing of trust in the society and in the institutions. And when we talk about nation states and the importance of trust in nation states, I think we can say that if it is important at national level, it is even more important at European level, because the European integration is a special kind of a cooperation of the member states, a very intensive and probably a new form of cooperation of the nation states is based on trust, basically. When it was established, the whole institutional framework, it was trust on institutional. It was established on institutional trust, while the formal name of the original institutional framework was a European Economic Community. I think the informal name of that institutional framework is even more telling, which was the common market. So it was not based, contrary to nation states, it was not based on the interpersonal trust, communities, but it was based on institutions. The common market was the fundamental institution, which was the foundation of the whole institutional setup. And until the late 80s, the early 90s, I would say that this institutional framework and this institutional trust was good enough to fulfill all the expectations of the member states and of the political elites or the business elites and all these communities. The problem started slowly in the second half of the 60s with the anti-chairs crisis, when France left the common institutions and they boycotted, I mean, the French politicians, or the French delegation boycotted the EEC decision-making platforms, blocking the whole decision-making procedures based on consensual methods. But the solution, the first tentative solutions, born only in the late 80s, early 90s, when the whole idea of the establishment of a European Union, a political community, emerged. Now the European integration, I think, trust-wise, if we approach the whole problem from the point of view of the trust, of the issue of trust, now is in a deep crisis, because this institutional trust was shaken first by the economic crisis of 2008, when all the hopes and all the expectations towards the continuous economic growth and the good economic performance made possible by the European integration itself vanished, and the Brexit referendum of 2016 and the refugee or migrant crisis of 2015, which destroyed the public trust towards the institutions, the European institutions, the public trust which was embedded that these European institutions can handle all the societal and political conflicts emerging during the European integration. And now that's the problem, because this community in parentheses, was based on institutions, the common market, the European Parliament, the Council, the European Commission, as a bunch of European institutions. But there was no interpersonal trust embedded in this whole institutional setup. This interpersonal trust was replaced by procedures, institutional procedures, the legal order, the economic rationale of this whole complexity. And now, when this whole setup was shaken in the early millennial years, some of the European politicians are thinking about producing an interpersonal trust at European level. And that's the issue of the European identity, the European citizenship, possible future plans on establishing a United States of Europe, a kind of refunding a nation state at a supranational level. And I think the core of this whole crisis of the European integration is now that there's no firm solution to handle these issues, while the European Union as such, as an institutional setup, lacks the soft background of the European community, of a community at European level. And that's why, for me, as a European Commissioner between 2014 and 2019, one of the fundamental and most exciting question and issue was to map up the opportunities of the character and the possibility of a European identity. Should we have a European identity? Do we have a European identity? Or is it possible to have a European identity? Because I think that's the key issue of the future of the European integration. If the answer is no, then the European Union will die, will weaken, will vanish, will disappear, or it will be transformed into something else. I mean, that can be a multi-layer European Union with a strong focus on the Euro zone, for instance, with some outer regions and outer parts of the EU. It can be returned to its origins, or it can be restarted as a federal pilot project at European level. But if we have at least a conditionally yes answer, then we can work on a European Union which is a community of communities, as it was put by János Martonyi, a former Hungarian foreign minister. And for me, this is the this is the nicest definition of the European Union. I think in a case of a nation, just like the Hungarian nation, where the borders of the state and the borders of the nation are not congruent, that's the most optimistic and the best scenario for the European future. And my answer is that yes, we can have a European identity. Moreover, we do have a European identity. But if we want to talk about the European identity, we must exclude all the mutually exclusive categories of the identity, which means that the fundamental construction of the identity is not a homogeneous one, which means that if I say that I'm a European, it doesn't exclude the opportunity to be a Hungarian, a Trans-Danubian, a Western citizen, or a Catholic, or any other identities. But on the contrary, it makes it necessary to put all my layers of identities together. That's the European identity. So if I'm a good citizen of my hometown, if I'm a good citizen of my home region, if I'm a good citizen of my country, if I'm a good citizen of my macro region, I'm a good citizen of Europe. So European identity is the top of the layers of identity, and that gives the opportunity for the European Union to establish a kind of interpersonal trust for giving a heart or soul to the European integration, and helping the EU to go across this firewall, this crisis, and to build a loose but very powerful and solid community of communities. And it will give a new boost for the institutional cooperation, I'm sure. It will give back the trust of the citizens in the European project, and that would be the solution for the future European Union. Thank you very much.